there is a duty that you have as a chess player to hit them before they can get safe. And sometimes that's not the most obvious thing to do because your opponent may look like they have a solid structure. But we're going to look at examples of how you can go about doing that. Okay, so today is all about striking while the iron is hot. If your king is safe and your opponent's king is not safe, learning when to hit them, even if it's in a very unusual way or in a sacrificial way, going after their king and taking advantage of their lack of coordination. So we're going to see that in action. All right, so I was white in this game, and remember, this is just a 3-minute game on chess.com, so we're not going to look at it too deeply. But when we look at the high-level games after this, we're going to see those were classical games of chess. Okay, so I was white, and my opponent, who is also an FM, plays Scandinavian defense. I played knight to c3. Knight f3 is an interesting way to play, and then to try to go d4 and c4, but I find it boring, so I like to play knight c3. Queen back to d8. This is a line. I'm not too fond of this line. I still think queen to d6 and queen a5 are the best moves, but queen to d8 is getting a little bit resurrected a little bit recently. d4, this is all standard. And against the Scandinavian, I actually always liked to play bishop to d3, which is a very rare move, but I also play this move against the queen a5 Scandinavian as well. And what's the point of bishop to d3? Well, the first point is this pawn isn't hanging because of check, right? You guys know that basic discovery, right? You know, that one comes out of the French defense. Everyone learns it out of the French defense. So I like bishop to d3 because it stops the bishop from coming out to f5. And if they play bishop to g4, which is more or less what happened in my game, like a little bit later, then I'll show you how to do that. But basically, the idea is to work against this bishop coming out easily. So c6 was played. I played knight to e2. That's part of this setup. Bishop to g4, f3. And one idea behind this setup for white is that this bishop is still out of play. So you want to play knight to g3 and then f4, f5 to open up the rook and slam the pawn in their king side. And it looks weird to have the pawn on f3, but it's not going to remain there for very long. The idea is knight to g3 and then f4, f5. So f3 is just to stop the bishop from being able to trade itself easily. And this is all pretty normal. e6, I played king to h1 because I want to carry out that plan, but if I move my knight, I don't want him to capture this pawn with check. So I move my king out of there. Bishop to g6, f4. So this is the basic idea. You're trying to attack and pry open the center by creating a pawn attack. So here comes the f-pawn. We had a trade. He played g6, and g6 makes sense because you're trying to stop f5. So for example, my king is in the corner, his king is in the center, but the way we got to take advantage of that is we have to open the center. The way you open a position is with pawn breaks. So he wanted to stop the position from opening, so he played g6, clamping down on this pawn break. So I played knight to g3, and he played a very risky move here. He should conclude his development. I mean, I would have probably done the same thing, but he should have at least played. He played h5, which is a really bad move. Now, and the reason why it's a bad move is because he's taking for granted that his king is safe in the center. And I would say, and this sort of brings me to the moment that's the most important about this game, because it's not really an opening survey. So one interesting thing that I have learned which I probably did not know when I was like 13 to 1500, is I am almost sure that when I was 13 to 1500, I would have just played like here. I'm almost sure of that. I mean, you guys in the chat, you may be able to back me up on this, but when I was 13 or 13 to 1500, I almost certainly would have just developed a piece here. There wouldn't have been this idea that I have to like kill them. It would just be like, okay, I'm the lead in development, let me just keep developing my pieces. But part of good attacking plans is recognizing how far away your opponent is from getting their king safe. So if my king, my opponent's king is here, let's suppose they want to play bishop to g7 and castle. I'm not sure this move fits with that. Again, I'm not sure why he played this move, but let's suppose he's 2 moves away from castling. Bishop to g7 and castle, or bishop to e7 and castle. If he goes to the queen side, he would be 3 moves away from castling. So, okay. But it's white's move, it's my move. So, if you play something like bishop to d2 or bishop to e3, he goes boom and castles, and then you have to work again. You have to work to punish him again because he's got his king safe. So, even in a blitz game, and this was a 3-minute blitz game, even in a blitz game, I knew what I had to do here. It was no doubt that I knew I had to do this. Now, of course, calculation is very minimal in a 3-minute game because you only have 3 minutes. So it's whatever's coming to my brain first, but the difference between myself and you is that, okay, I have lots of experience and at least a little bit of intuition, which will say, okay, Peter, you got to do this. You got to do that, right? You may not have that intuition, but if you're playing a longer game of chess, you can use your calculation to back it up. But I knew I had to play an aggressive move here before my opponent could get castled, and he's only 2 moves away from doing that. I knew I had to take a crack at him, even if it was sacrificial. So what did I play? And not only did I play it, and it's not right because I played it, I also checked it with the computer. It's the right move. So what did I play? Yes, very good. I played the move f5. It didn't take me long to play this move because at the cost of a single pawn, I'm opening up lines for everything. Instead of passively developing my bishop behind these pawns, I ditch the pawn to open up my rooks, my bishops, and everything in the position. So, okay. So he took with the g-pawn, which I sort of expected because, well, if you take with the e-pawn, that opens the e-file. If you take with the e-pawn, you open the e-file. I'm very happy there. So after f5, he played g takes f5. And now because I don't have this pawn in my way, I can develop my bishop more purposefully, and I'm bringing my other rook over to the middle of the board. So my opponent played bishop to e7, and I brought my other rook over. So yes, I sacrificed a pawn, but there is no safe haven for the king right now unless he gets to the queen side. So he needs 2 moves of development plus a 3rd move to castle in order to go queenside. Okay, so he played knight to d7, and he's again a few moves away from castling to the queenside, where he may find safe haven, although not really, because there's all these sorts of tricks down the open file. Here, I played the move d5 because just like f5, d5 completely smashes open the center. It looks like a crazy move. I know, it's not the most obvious move. But, again, thank you, Marshall, for 200 bits. Again, the concept is open everything while the king is still in the middle. So, he has 800 pieces guarding that square, including 2 pawns pinching it. But my objective is to just open everything up. And in order to do that, I have to do pawn breaks. This, in conjunction with a sacrifice on f5 to open up the e-file, it's all in the air. So it's all coming, don't worry. So I thought a few things might happen. I thought a few things could happen here. So obviously, if he takes with this pawn, opening up the file, knight takes f5 is an easy knockout. Because there's just no way to guard that. If he doesn't take, I'm going to take. If he takes with the c pawn, then I was going to play knight takes f5. And if he takes, just attack him with all my pieces. And I'm threatening to take here twice because he's in a pin. I'm also have knight takes d5 is in the air as well. So all of my pieces are in the game, and despite the fact that I have one less piece, it won't matter because his pieces are out of play. And yeah, okay. So after the move d5, which I thought was a really cool move to play, he played knight takes d5, and then I had a lot of fun. So I played knight takes, he played bishop takes g5, I played queen takes f5, and he played rook f8, and then how did I finish the game here? I was very happy. I was very happy to play this in a blitz game. I thought this was a pretty good game for a blitz game. So everything is hanging, but they're not really hanging, right? Yeah, I played rook takes e6, and I said sayonara, Igor, and then I walked away. I dropped the mic and I walked away. So let's get through the opening. It was a queen's gambit, and this is, more or less like it's been played a million times. Okay. So this is an option. Bishop takes f6 after the move b6. The idea is in this position that white's idea is gave away the bishop pair, but now that the pawn structure is a little bit more secure, the move b6 doesn't really jive because if you put your bishop here, it doesn't have an open diagonal. So the problem with this is black has the two bishops, and in the long run, black will look to open the position up so that those bishops can reign free. And that's sort of what happens. Okay, bishop to e6, queen to e7, and Geller is preparing the move pawn to c5, which is a pawn break, which of course is designed to try to pry open the center so that those bishops have a little bit more scope. Okay. So pawn to g3, and I would say, to me, you shouldn't play that move, right? To me, you should just move this bishop to e2 or something, and then get castled as fast as possible. And I think Saki's probably regretted this because, yeah, he probably regretted this move. Because, once again, we have a scenario where white has now prolonged his ability, the number of moves needed for castling. So white needs to move the bishop and then castle. So Geller's like, and you didn't have to ask Geller twice. Geller was a fierce attacking player. So Geller's like, what do I do? Okay, I got it. I'm going to hit you with c5, which is what I was going to do anyway. But it's even better now because I'm hitting you and your king is still in the middle, right? So here, of course, Saki should develop, but he captured in an effort to weaken this pawn, even though that means more time in the center for the white king and a nice open diagonals for the bishops. But Saki's is like, look, I've got this weak little pawn here I'm targeting. And Geller's like, dude, I don't care about my pawns, man. I care about the fact that your king is in the middle and my king is not. And that's your problem, right? So I'm going to put this into your hands now, chat. Geller wants to pry open the center before white can get castled, which means before white can develop this bishop in some way and then get castled. And so what did Geller do? So what Geller did was he actually included a second piece in the attack, or another piece in the attack, I should say, not a second one. He's already got a few. He's already got a few in the attack. He includes a new piece into the attack and threatens to play the move that all of you in the chat are suggesting, which is d4. But Geller first played the move rook to d8, which is the strongest move in the position. I think if d4, after knight takes, we don't ever have to take with the e-pawn. And so white can get castled, right? So the move rook to d8 was played by Geller, and he said, look, if you want to keep taking my pawns, by all means, but I want to play the move d4, as all of your instincts told you in the chat, you guys want to go d4. The thing is, you want white to have to take with the e-pawn so that you can do some discoveries, right? If you go d4 first, he takes with the knight, and then if you take, he still doesn't have to take with his e-pawn. So white might just be winning material here pretty safely. And I say that loosely, but it's more secure that way. Rook to d8, though, after the move d4, if knight takes, bishop takes, he'd have to take with the pawn, opening up the e-file. So Saki's really playing with fire here, took another pawn. He's principal. He's saying, you're going to have to show me, Geller. You're going to have to show me why you're sacrificing these pawns, because I know my king is in the middle, but I'm winning material. The problem for Saki's is Geller did not mess around. And Geller was one of the strongest grandmasters of his time period, and Saki's playing with fire big time here. He's not playing Joe Schmo at the chess club in St. Petersburg or in Baku. He's playing the real deal. And so Geller played what move here? Of course, d4. With eyes closed. Saki's playing with fire here, taking that second pawn. Geller's like, here you go, have another one. d4, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Okay, so bishop to g2. And that's a very interesting move. This is sort of a funny move, because the idea is, if you take my knight, I take your rook, and in the end, white has this. Ouch! White wins. The joke would be on black if black takes the knight. After all those trades, okay, but black's not going to take the knight. Black played knight to c6, guarding this rook, connecting the rooks, and now threatening to take the knight. So the momentum is still in black's favor. White's king is in the middle. Black is creating threats, so white cannot get castled right now. White has to address these threats. So white played knight takes. Black played knight takes. Pawn takes. And now Geller's got all of these discoveries here, right? He's got a bunch of discoveries, but Geller has to play it right, because this rook is hanging. And, I mean, in the long run. So it's not as easy as just playing some generic move and say, ooh, discovery, because the thing is, white is up a piece, and white has some threats, so it is important to play accurately here for black. So here's what happens. Bishop to h3 check. That move isn't all that difficult to understand. There's a check on the king, and there's an attack on the bishop. Okay, and there's also like rook takes coming in as well. I think what Geller wanted to do is, he knew king f1 was going to happen, guarding the bishop. But the funny thing about this position is, this bishop is pinning the bishop on g2 from taking this rook, which is sort of funny, even though it's hanging. Very obscure position. And so rook takes d4 was played. Queen to e3. And then now Geller played an awesome, strong move here, queen to b7. Attacking the bishop. And the bishop cannot capture the queen because of the cross pin. And if the bishop takes the bishop, the queen takes the rook in the corner with check. Very nice move by Geller. And again, it's this, abstract way of dealing with this concept of, okay, king is in the middle. You have to find these good moves. They're there. They exist because the king is weak, but you still have to find them. So queen b7, as Sorenzo says. Okay. So f3 was played by Sakis because he wants to break that, and he wants to get rid of this bishop. We had a trade. Queen to a6 check, and it's all she wrote. All of black's pieces come into the game now, and black isn't even down anything. Black is down basically nothing. Rook to d8, another move with great tempo. Knight to f2, bishop to d4, and white's position is absolutely horrific. And after bishop takes f2, the game ends. So, of course, one nice way would be nice for the game to finish this way. Queen takes f2, check, right? And then, whatever. But the point is, and if you take with the king, it's just your pieces just can't get out of this bind. For example, if you play king f1, okay, guys, this is a variation that was mentioned by Nunn in his book, Win at Chess Quickly. But what move should black play here to finish the game? This is pretty beautiful, and then we'll move on to the next game after a quick synopsis. Yes, very good, very good. Bishop to c8. A wonderful rerouting of the bishop to the most powerful square on a6, which, with the queen bearing down the dark diagonal and the bishop bearing down the light diagonal, the game will be over. And beautiful. And notice this bishop can't move out of the way to allow the king in because it just doesn't have a safe square to go to. So bishop to a6 is coming in hot. So here we go. So e4, c5 Sicilian. And we have the Moscow variation of the Sicilian. Bishop to b5 check. So I like to play this as well. Knight to d7. Pawn to d4. This is all standard theory. We're going to get to the sort of important part here in just a minute. Okay, so very interesting play has ensued. So the idea here of rook to b1 is to guard this bishop by x-ray. And so after takes, for example, which did not happen in the game, and takes, the bishop is now defended. And it would be a death wish for the queen to take here because the queen is going to really be just totally out of the game. Similar to what happens in the game, actually. Okay, but the purpose of rook to b1 is to eliminate the threat toward the bishop by using its x-ray defense. Okay, so pawn to a6. Master Vasilis took. Castles. And then Volokitin takes and goes e6. Okay, so we look at this position and, and again, in tune with what we're discussing today, which is this duty that you have as a chess player to see that your opponent is in an unsafe situation and then to carry out a series of moves which is designed to take advantage of that. I'm almost sure, I don't know, 1300 to 1500, when I was 1300 to 1500, I may have taken this pawn. I may have played something generic like rook to e1 or bishop to f4 or something normal like generic. But you shouldn't do that here. there should be pressure on you as the player playing the white pieces. There should be pressure on you to open the center and attack the center while black's king is still there. So what did Master Vasilis play? Exactly. Bishop to g5 does actually seem principled as well, because it does stop the basic bishop e7. But d5, the one way you can assure that you assure yourself that you're going to open up the center is by creating pawn tension. The ability for pawns to trade opens up lines, right? Once those pawns, poof, evaporate. Like, imagine these pawns just left the board right now. It would be a total free-for-all toward black's king. So I'm sure for this strong grandmaster, d5 was the first candidate move that he was thinking about, right? Like, oh yeah, d5, I mean, boom, let's trade these pawns, baby, and we're going to open this up, right? So I cannot believe what Volakeetan played here. I'm looking at this position and I'm thinking to myself, I cannot believe Grandmaster Andrei Volakeetan played queen takes a2. I mean, he is asking for trouble. I mean, this is like this is like robbing the bank and then turning yourself into the police. Like, you're just asking, you want to get caught, okay? When you play a move like queen to a2. You just want to get screwed, okay? Your king is in the center, and, it's like there's a cop eating donuts right outside of Krispy Kreme, right? And you're like, okay, I want to rob a donut shop today, and I'm going to rob that one right there, and I'm going to rob that one right now, and there's a police officer standing right out. That's exactly what black just did here with queen takes a2. I'm like, what? I get it. He's attacking the rook, and he's attacking this pawn. He's hoping to do something about that. But, of course, Master Vasilis plays rook to b3, which saves the rook and completely shuts the queen out of the game. Completely. And, and so this tension hasn't gone away. The fact that white lost his a-pawn, it's like white could care less about the a-pawn. The a-pawn's not going to be relevant in this game with the king still in the middle and all this pawn tension. The queen is sidelined, so she's not going to be able to protect. So, takes. This is what happened in the game, and you can see that white is ready to roll. Bishop to e7, or bishop to e6, and what did white play here? Ruthless move, but it doesn't take much to play this move because you're going after the guy's king. So it doesn't take anything to play a move like this. Pawn to d7. Because this does one of two things. If the king captures, then we know that the king is permanently stuck in the center of the board. No castling rights possible. We could even grab that with check. If bishop takes, which is what happened in the game, after check, we get that with tempo. So we get rook to e1 for free. Bishop to e6, and then queen takes d5. This is just a massacre here because king is in the middle. All the pawns are gone. Remember, I said, what would happen if all those pawns are gone? All those pawns are gone, and it's all white right here. You do not want to be black right now. You do not want to be black in this game. I'm telling you. Look at that. You happy now? You happy with that? I don't think so. Bishop to e7. Queen takes b7. The idea is I'm attacking your rook, and castling doesn't do the trick, connecting the rooks, because I grab this bishop, and at least I'm up a piece. Actually, I shouldn't take the bishop immediately, because this is under attack. I should go here first. attack your queen, save my rook, and then take your bishop. But nonetheless, in the end, the bishop is under attack. So white's going to emerge a piece up. So after queen takes b7, Volakeiten played rook to d8, but keep in mind that castling is still not really possible because of the same trick. Rook to b2 and queen takes e7. So just keep that in mind. So knight to g5, another piece enters the fray. Yeah, this is a rough situation for Volakeiten. Bishop takes, and what very strong move did Master Vasilis play here? I think if you just take back, black castles and black's out of the woods. You take his rook, he takes yours, and you let black castle. So white had a very, I wouldn't say it's overly difficult move after bishop takes g5, but it's principled in that it doesn't allow black to castle. What did Master Vasilis play here? He didn't play rook takes e6. I think that might be a little bit too much because I don't see the follow-up. He played queen c6. Exactly. Queen c6 check. Very good. Very good. And you can't block with the bishop. And if you block with your rook, which is what happens in the game, now all you crazy people who were suggesting rook takes e6, now the crushing move, rook takes e6. Check. And now the idea is this rook can come down with a check, which is why we needed to insert that in-between move first to get that rook off the back rank. So the game concluded as follows. Rook b8 check, king c7, queen b6 checkmate. A beautiful attacking display where the queen remains on the a2 square. Hi, I'm Peter Giannatos, founder of the Charlotte Chess Center. Subscribing to our YouTube channel is statistically proven to limit your blunders.